My name's Baden Saathoff. I've been at Westminster most of my life, and today I'm going to share a little bit about what I did last summer. It's good.
No, we can't see you.
No, it's good. This is how it works.
Okay. They can see you on
Yep.
Zoom?
Yep, they can see me on Zoom.
Thanks, Mom.
Believe it.
All right, so thank you all for coming. I'm going to go over a few different things, kind of an overview of what the trail is, because a lot of people haven't heard about it or don't know anything about what it's like to hike. So I'll go over what it's like to hike the trail, some personal highs and lows throughout the journey. I'll do a little story time, let you guys pick some stories for me to tell, and then some questions and some cool pictures. So this is me at the Mexican border. It's the big wall. That was the first day I started hiking. And this is the map of the entire Pacific Crest Trail.
Wow.
It starts in the center of California, right at the Mexican border, and goes up through Central California, Northern California, all the way through Oregon, and then Central Washington, all the way to the middle of the Canadian border. So one thing that you don't really see in this map is that you have to walk west about 500 miles throughout the whole journey. So California has that big skew, so it's about 1,000 straight, and then with all the switchbacks and everything, it's another 1,000, and then the skew is about 500. So if you're just going to walk directly from Mexico to Canada, it would be a lot easier. It would be like 1,000 miles or something. But I chose to take a trail. All right. So a lot of people wonder how I navigated throughout the trail. So my original plan was to carry a bunch of paper maps, but to get all the paper maps that I would need, it's about 5 pounds of paper maps, and I'd have to carry bunches. And it was just a complex issue because all the weather and everything, I would be worried that the maps would fade out or something. So I chose to go with an application called Far Out. It's a really cool application. It has a bunch of different waypoints along the trail. And so let's say I'm going to look for water in the next 10 miles. It would show, oh, there's water here and here. So I'd click on a waypoint, and then people would put feedback about that water. So especially in the desert, water sources are seasonal, and even sometimes just if it had rained earlier that week. So it's important that other people ahead of you give you that information so you can make better choices to get water along the way. And this was kind of a community building app a little bit. Near the end, it turned into like a social media almost, because everyone would be talking back and forth and yelling at each other. Like it was just a bunch of fun to use the app because everyone you were hiking with also used it. So the movie Wild, that's what a lot of people who don't know much about the trail would relate my hike to. It's changed a lot over the years. And so this is an example of the person that's portrayed in Wild starting her hike. And that's her backpack. This was my backpack. So metal frame backpacks aren't used anymore, mostly frameless. I did see 4 people using metal frame backpacks still, which is a feat of its own. So her backpack was about 50 pounds. Mine was under 15. So it's changed, the technology's changed a lot over the years. So some of the stuff that I carried, a shelter. So this was my shelter. And this is a tent that's set up with my trekking poles.
Big,
So
you wanna pass that around?
yeah, sure.
So how much does that weigh?
So it's just about a pound.
1.25.
Yeah. And so I would set that up with trekking poles because I'm already using trekking poles for balance on rocky terrain. So the trick to getting a light backpack is making a piece of gear used as many times as possible. So my trekking poles were used for balance. They were used for setting up my tent. They were used for bear hangs in bear country and a bunch of other stuff like drying out clothes. Yeah, so a bear hang, that's when you hang a bag up a tree to prevent bears from going up, yeah. And so sleeping gear, I carried this sleeping bag the whole way. It's just a 20-degree sleeping bag, but it works really well for temperatures below that. My backpack was a frameless backpack. It's kind of just like a piece of fabric with a lot of places to hang stuff off the edges. And then for safety, this is my medical kit. So it's mostly pills and a few bandages and stuff. I did get a wilderness first aid certification before doing this, just to make sure I knew how to do everything, and did end up using it a few times on other people, but never myself.
Oh, nice.
And this is what I'd eat most of my meals out of, this little container, or a pot here. And yeah, that's about it. So this is how my backpack would usually look. So I'd strap food to the outside. This is a baguette that I picked up at a local bakery along the way. And then you see I have most of my gear on the outside, and that's so it doesn't get moldy and has a chance to dry. And also so I can reach around and get everything out without having to take my backpack off or unroll everything. And this is one of my friends, Ian, on the right, and his backpack was huge in comparison to everyone else's on the trail. And he carried like full-size knives and everything at the beginning, but at the end he had basically nothing. He didn't need any of that. So what you learn along the way is you really don't need a lot of stuff to live. You just need maybe this many items. So this is my sleeping setup. So the tent that's being passed around, that's me in that tent. A bear can. Some national parks require that you carry these around. These are for protecting your food against bears and rodents, mostly rodents, not too many bears. And these are really annoying because they're 3 pounds and they're really bulky and hard to carry on a small backpack. No one's really a huge fan of those regulations. So a lot of people think that you're alone the whole time on the trail, but about 1,000 people hike it a year. So this is me going through the desert, and this was just a big line of people. So there's a real community out there. There's a whole bunch of people. This is kind of an age breakdown. So the oldest person I saw out there was 72, and she completed the trail. So pretty much everyone in this room can.
Yeah. 72 again.
So
Okay.
it's a lot more about the mental aspect rather than the physical. Like you can, throughout the trail, you become physically in shape enough to do it. It's more the mental aspect that really hinders people. So I was one of the few people out there that was 19. I only saw 4 other people younger than me out there. So mostly, I would say it's people right out of college or out of their first job.
And the 4,000, it's 4,000 people.
4,000 finished, yeah.
4,000.
Yep. And so
You can sit outside.
So this is an example of the community on the trail. So this was a surprise birthday party for a friend. So Maggie was her name, and so everyone all planned to be at the same point at one day. And so we all had lunch with their parents and everything. and
wow.
brought our dog. So that was fun. And you can see it's just in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
So, so I'm gonna go through a few people that I met on the trail. So I've never seen a more diverse group of people. I think there are 50% of people were international hikers, which is a statistic that you don't really think about, but it really makes you appreciate what we have in the US, the wilderness and just the sheer size of the wilderness. So Tickshot was one of the first people that I met on trail. He was in the Navy Special Forces for 25 years, but I only figured that out the last day with him. I hiked with him for 700 miles and thought he just did flooring adhesives. But it came up on the last day, and so
That's so funny.
Gritty was basically doing the same thing that I was, taking a semester off college to do it. John was a Mormon, an ex-Mormon, who designs products like hiking poles. So he's out there more for work. And then Marcella was from the Czech Republic, a mother of 4. So it just shows that like there's a whole big group of people out there. And she did fall and get a rock stuck in her skull, which was unfortunate. But she completed the trail still, which is just yeah.
With the rock, or did
With
she
the
get
rock,
rock?
yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Oh,
And
hardcore.
yeah, I've never met anyone more hardcore.
Literally.
And then Ian and Bailey, I hiked about 2,000 miles with them, and they're both geologists and cavers from Austin, Texas.
Cool.
Pat is an ICU nurse. Carolina was a PhD student from Denmark. And Slowburn was a high-end bartender from Palm Springs.
Where did these names come from?
So these names are trail names, and they're kind of a nickname. So you meet a lot of strangers along the way, and a lot of the time you don't want to give out your full real name. So you use nicknames, and it's kind of a fun tradition too. Like over the years, everyone just uses.
So what was your name?
What was yours?
I was Shade because I would run ahead and then sit in the shade. So this is one of my favorite parts to talk about, which is the food. This is Ian on the right and me on the left, just coming back from Walmart. So my thought process is the most interesting part about the food cycle. So right when I walk into the grocery store, I'm thinking about calories for now because I've probably run out of food the last day and I'm hungry and I'm ready for some ice cream. So I start by getting ice cream so I'm not shopping hungry. And then I calculate my needs while eating the ice cream.
How was it paid for?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so while I'm eating my ice cream, I'm looking at the maps ahead. I'm talking to hikers going the other direction to figure out the conditions, how the next resupply looks, if it has enough food and is stable. Because some resupplies are seasonal, like seasonal shops or grocery stores. And then I'm looking into balance. If it's a 14-day carry, which is a huge carry, that's 2 weeks of food, then I have to pack small, light food only. But if it's 2 days, I can really mess around and bring big cakes or something like that. So this is an example of a fun resupply. If it was the 14-day resupply, it would be only ramen and only Nutri-Grain bars for weight. Yeah. And so this is a fun resupply, so I'll show you this one. So my meal cycle would be in the morning, I'd wake up, I'd eat apple fritters, usually 2 of them, a candy bar, and then throughout the morning, I'd eat 3 to 4 more candy bars or protein bars. For lunch, then I would have cheese, a baguette, and some salami, and usually a box of cookies. And then throughout the rest of the day, 3 more candy bars or protein bars. And then dinner would be probably a mac and cheese, a ramen, and then a box of cookies again.
Nice.
So, yeah.
What did you do with all the packaging?
So that's coming up. I have a
Okay.
slide on that. Yeah. So everything, so
How many calories did you eat?
about 6,000 calories a day was what I was consuming, and I still lost a lot of weight along the way. One thing that was interesting was I didn't really want to eat anymore at a certain point. Like I was getting tired of all the foods that I used to like. So I'd branch out into really weird areas of the grocery store to try to get something new and fun. So cold soaking was one of the sadder things that I did on the PCT. So this is a Talenti jar. And so in the desert, you're not wanting hot ramen, you're not wanting anything like warmed up. So you take your ramen, you put it in here, you put in some water, you close it and you walk with it for about an hour. And then you can eat it because it's kind of mushy. So these are examples of things I did that with. That's a rice-a-roni bowl on the right, some dinosaur egg oatmeal with chia seeds, and some Knorr's rice sides. That's one thing I'll never eat again. So because the PCT is pretty remote, a logistical concern is getting food to those remote locations. One example is Tehican, which is a remote town in the middle of Washington that you can only get to with a 3-hour ferry ride. So for that town, you have to send a box. And for a lot of other towns like that, you send a box. So that's me on the right prepping boxes. And then along the trail, I also prep boxes. So in a bigger town like Bend, Oregon or something, you'd prep a lot of boxes and then send them ahead to the smaller towns where food wasn't as readily available.
And who else sent you boxes, Baden?
We never guess, Mom.
It was a family trip.
And then to your question, the breakdown. So we take all the packaging off and store everything in gallon Ziplocs that we kind of vacuum seal with our hands. And then the placement in the bag is one of the most important parts that I learned. So this was my food bag. So you want to place things that you're going to eat first on the top. So all the dinners usually went on the bottom, and then you place your snacks how you want to eat them. Because your food bag's the heaviest, so it should go in the bottom of your backpack to have the best weight distribution. So you really don't want to have to open it up and dig through it when you're really hungry, because that just sucks. And then you hope you have enough food and you did your math right. And there are a few times where I did not do my math right, and I went hungry for a day or two along the way. So water, I used a Sawyer squeeze to filter water. I don't know where that is on the table. So these are examples of water sources in the desert that I really trusted the filter on. So this is some unsafe drinking water from a cow trough, and that was some I drank. And then this is a cistern on the right, which is used for putting out fires, but they're notorious for having dead lizards in them because the tops aren't always closed, like this example. And I did get sick, but only twice, so that's pretty good. This is a trail angel, which I'll talk about later, and they provided water for us in some really dry and tricky sections. So these are two examples of kind people leaving us a little water. And then a place where you think you might have a lot of water is on 15 feet of snow, but all the water sinks right to the bottom of the snowpack and goes out under. So water is super hard to find on long stretches of snow. So melting snow is really important, bringing enough propane and fuel.
How much water do you typically drink a day or before it's out?
So the math that I would do for that, a full day, 7 liters usually. In the desert, it could be upwards of 14. And then in some of the the colder sections like the Sierra, it was like 1 or 2.
How far apart were your water sources?
The farthest was about 50 miles, but that was luckily broken up by a really bad water source, one of the cow troughs. So this is an example of us avoiding the heat, hiking at night during sunset and sunrise and just through the night. The desert was crazy because it would be 110 during the day in the Mojave, and then it would switch all of a sudden to like 50 or 40 degrees. So you'd put on all your jackets right away, right when it's flipped. So this is an example of us avoiding the heat. And throughout the day, siestas were very popular. So these are shady spots that we found in the desert. These might be the only 2 that I found in the desert. But this is us having lunch and just hanging out and napping together. So some of the lowest moments along the way, I had E. coli and I had to walk through terrain like this, and it was like 100 degrees out. So that was a low moment. But luckily there was a church, a Presbyterian church, I think, in the middle of Bernie, which I was walking through, and they were kind enough to let us stay while we got the E. coli out of our system.
Nice.
Yeah. Fires. So the fires were crazy this year. All throughout Washington, there are uncontrolled forest fires. This was a fire in the Sisters Wilderness, and this is what it looked like 2 years ago. And then when we walked through it, it looked like this. So it was just hard to walk through stuff like this for hundreds of miles just because the sun's beaming on you and your socks end up looking like this when you're washing them because all of the soot in the dirt. This was a sad moment. It might not look like it, but this is the amount of food I have, which is maybe enough for a day. And I had 3 days left in the Sierra without any resupplies. So I had to ration food there. And then some nights it would get below 0 degrees, especially at high elevations. I think both of these were over 10,000 feet. But it's actually warmer, I learned, to wrap yourself in your tent instead of setting up your tent. So these are examples of me wrapping myself in my tent for a bad night. One other bad thing, this was 2 years ago, same time of year. And then this is what I walked through.
Wow.
So it's pretty nice and sunny, and then the lake was frozen. So the snow was super tricky this year. I had to skip around some of it and then come back when it melted out, but it was really hard to handle. So this is some of the gear that I used. I used an ice axe and micro spikes and crampons to get traction on the snow.
Wow.
But this is an example of what not to do in the snow. This lady in the middle, we hiked on snow only at night and in the early morning because it forms a nice layer of ice on top so you don't fall through. So this is really dangerous what she's doing because you don't know what's under the snow. So this is an example of when traction gear was really needed. So we're wearing crampons and ice axes. Water crossings were really difficult. This is an example of an easy one, but sometimes they look like this. And this was some of the scariest stuff was snow bridges. So we're walking over that. So this is a cool picture that we saw a snow bridge and we're like, oh, we should get a picture of that. But the dangerous part is you can't always see that there's big water sources under you. So there's a lot of mapping and being with people that are experienced in snow. So now we got the bad parts over. There was a lot more good parts. So just the views were amazing. Like every day at lunch, I'd get a view like this, or it was just awesome along the way. Climbing Whitney was definitely a high point. this was the day before the end, climbing the highest peak in the lower 48. So that was a whole bunch of fun and doing it with cool people. Sunsets were always amazing, just transforms the wilderness around you. And being with cool people, this was especially good because we just walked through I-10, and I-10 has a McDonald's on the trail. So we packed out hundreds of McDonald's hamburgers. And on the topic of hamburgers, town was also a high point. So cell service is something people often ask about. We get cell service about once every 10 days in the more rural areas. So we get it on ridges and cliffs like this, mostly. So this is at the top of a peak in Goat Rocks Wilderness, and we're all on our phones calling family and trying to figure out what's going on the trail ahead of us, because you're blind until you have cell reception, really.
You can't use the app if you don't.
Well, so we download all our maps, but they're not updated to closures or fires or stuff like that. So we always have to be aware of what's around us and realize that we have outdated data.
Ben, do you want to talk about your inReach?
Oh yeah. So I also had a satellite phone just in case of emergencies, which was nice. It was a good peace of mind, at least for my parents. And
Did you ever use it?
no, I use other people. I use theirs for them, but not mine. So this is an example of a hiker box. It's a really cool thing. If you've ever seen those libraries where it's like take one, give one, it's the same idea but with gear. So people that don't want, let's say they finished a snowy section going southbound, will drop micro spikes in a hiker box, and then people going northbound will pick them up and reuse them that way. And so they just get transferred back and forth. And this happens with stuff like bear cans, and basically everything ends up in a hiker box eventually, and then someone will use it the other way. So I'm pretty confident that if I started with not a piece of gear, I could be up and going in maybe 100 miles with a full backpack and everything. So this is when my parents came out for a week or two and kind of walked along with us and fed us. So this is us eating some walking tacos out of the back of their car. And yeah, and they were cool enough to come and drive on some pretty sketchy forest roads to come get us in some pretty tricky areas. So that was really nice of them. And so in town, these are my 3 favorite towns. The top left is Julian, California. That's me hanging out in a VFW playing pool with veterans. The bottom left is Algo Dulce, California. And that's me taking a nap after having eaten a 3-pound burrito. And on the right was a trail angel's house. And trail angels are just kind people along the way that will help you out with assorted things. And he let me stay in his home with his whole family. And it was awesome because we just sat and watched the Dodgers games, and he cooked some really good brisket. So that was an awesome guy right there.
Did he make you shower before you came in?
Oh yeah, no, he had an outdoor shower. Yeah, funny story about him is he'll do this every once in a while. So he has a whole like process written out. He's like, you're not allowed to sit on the couch until you do like these 5 things. Another thing in town is charging. So charging all your electronics, all your mapping gear, everything like that. And talking to other hikers is probably the most important, because you're going to get information from people going the other direction about the conditions ahead. So if there's fire closures or low water sources or big hills, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because people will exaggerate a little bit, but it's a really great source of information because it's hard to figure out what's really ahead. And this is my overall favorite town, which is Mazama, Washington. There's maybe 5 people in this town. There's an older hippie lady that moved up there in the 70s, never moved out. And she just hosts hikers along the way and provides bikes into town. So that was just a really nice lady. And the town was awesome. It was just a bakery, which is all you need. All right, so I have a few stories. Looks like we have probably enough time for 2. All right, so these are a few stories. I'll read through the list and then I'll let people pick the stories to tell. So sleeping on an active motocross course, the 6 coolest hitchhikes I had, attempting to outrun an active forest fire blind, sleeping on the stage of an active EDM festival. And for those that don't know, EDM is electronic dance music. And number 5 is meeting best friends under I-10. So if anyone wants to raise their hand and pick a story. 2? All right, so 6 coolest hitchhikes, we'll start with that one. All right, so these are my 6 favorite hitchhikes. The first one in the top left was an older dude that renovated just old cars. And after he renovated them, every test drive, he'd drive up to the trailhead and back to town. So he kind of got a reputation that he'd always be there, like Fridays when he was testing his old cars for his company. So all the PCT hikers would kind of line up ready to get in this old guy's car. But every time he'd roll up in a new car. So we ended up getting this really cool old pickup truck. So that was a great one. The next one was a minivan with no seats. That was an interesting one. The guy's sitting in a lawn chair and driving the car. One more over is a law enforcement park ranger, and it's pretty illegal for them to pick up hikers. I don't know why, but it's just written in their job somewhere. But she was nice enough to pick us up and drive us a pretty far distance. And she was really cool. She was also a caver, and Bailey apparently knew her, someone I was hiking with. So that was kind of a fun coincidental, like, oh, I know you. This one is one of the scarier hitches I've had. It was a bunch of switchbacks from Sonora Pass, which is really high up, really snowy. And we were all in the back of a pickup with a dog. And we came down all these switchbacks, pinpoint, like turns 90 degrees, 180 degrees. And this guy was not driving slow because he apparently went up and down every day. So that had us pretty scared. The luckiest hitch I've had was this one. This guy picked us up in Mazama, which is the town of 5 people, and drove us all the way into Seattle, not just into Seattle, but to our hotel, and then drove us for food afterwards too. So this guy was awesome. He just wanted someone to talk to on his drive. But this was a 4.5 or 5 hour hitchhike,
Wow.
just in one go. So we got really lucky with him. And then the one on the far side that was a crazy hitch. It was 11 miles, and it was a trail angel that did that. And it was a 2-hour, 11-mile car ride, which is just because the roads didn't exist anymore. And she was crazy with how she drove on them. There were some that were washed out to like 45 degrees, and she'd hit it fast and like go up and over the sides and stuff. And everyone there was piled in the back.
Church lady.
Oh yeah. So my grandfather brought up a good one. Somewhere in California, there was 2 older ladies in a Honda Accord driving up the mountain, and they stopped for us. And two of my friends got into a pickup truck, and then four of us got into the old lady's car. And they took an hour to get up that hill, while our friends got up there in 10 minutes. They were like driving out.
They were driving up from Presbyterian Church.
Yeah, they were just coming home from church all dressed up.
Did you just, I mean, you just put your thumb out?
So,
People
so you're not missing any part of the trail. You're only taking these side trips to get food or get
Yeah.
rest, right?
So the idea is continuous footsteps is the
Yeah.
way to put it. But so I had footsteps all the way from Mexico to Canada. So every place that I would get off, I'd hitchhike into a town, come back at the exact same point, and then start walking again. So that way I got a full experience. All right, we'll go back to the stories. Any others?
I want to hear about the fire, forest fires.
Yes.
Three? All right. All right, so the forest fires were really interesting. This is 200 miles from the end, so the home stretch. We're all really fast and really in shape and just ready to get it over with. So we start seeing smoke a few days into the resupply, and on our right side, we're walking on some high ridges, and we see smoke just starting to billow up over and back down. So we're like, oh, that's odd. And so all of a sudden it like gets a lot bigger, and we had information that that fire was there, and it was 10 miles away, and it was fine, and it was controlled. But then the wind starts picking up, and we see all these planes start going over, like the orange planes with the buckets. So we're like, is there a highway around? Because we can't see them, we're in the smoke. So we're like, oh, is there a highway around or something? Like, are we getting close to a road? And then we get up out of the smoke on top of the mountain, and we see all these planes going over, dropping water. We're like, oh, we might. So we take a left turn down another trail to try to outrun it a little bit. And over the next 5 days, we're trying to walk around it. All the different fires. There were 4 different fires that we're keeping track of. So we'd go off trail to these huts on top of the mountains where there'd be these older fellows like lining it up with the fire and like relaying coordinates of how the fire's moving across the forest. So we talked to them, we talked to people coming southbound, and then this was the big key, was this PCT information sign that we luckily found at a trailhead that was nowhere close to the PCT. This was like 30 miles off the PCT. But it kind of gives like an overview of how to avoid all the fires. And I don't know if you can see this, but these are all different trails and turns. So there's maybe 20 different trails we had to take. And I'd say the middle 50% didn't exist anymore. So it was kind of just guesswork of, oh, we need to go over the ridge, down the pass, and through these to this lake, and then take a left. So that was a lot of fun. We hadn't done any route finding yet. So it was honestly kind of interesting. And being towards the end, we could still kick 25 miles doing some route finding. So it kind of was more exciting and fun than just walking on a trail. Could probably do one more.
Sleeping on the stage. Yeah.
The stage?
Yeah.
All right, so when walking through Northern California, this is the trail right here that comes through. And little did we know there was an EDM festival there. So we've been out in the wilderness for maybe 7 days, and we're coming down to this small town with only a general store and hotel. And we're expecting a quiet night. Maybe we'll grab a bite to eat and some pudding, because that's what they're famous for. And just sleep there, and no one will be there. It'll be awesome. We come down, there's about 5,000 people. And they're all like lined up along the trail, like for whatever reason, offering blueberries and stuff. So we were like overwhelmed. So we're like, what's going on here? And we're asking around. And so they're like, oh, it's the EDM festival. Like, you guys don't know? So they expected we'd know about the EDM festival, but we didn't. So we're going down and they're like, oh, it's over. Like, you guys missed it. It's okay. And we're like, okay, like at least it will be quiet at night. Like we can sleep at 6 o'clock like we normally do. And so we go across the river to kind of avoid the hubbub and set up our tents and go to sleep for the night. And at 11:30, we've been asleep for 4 hours, we hear the bass drop. And so our temples are starting to rattle from the bass. And Bailey gets out, who's the girl I was hiking with for a while, and Ian too, who's the guy I was hiking with, both walk across the river and are like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden we see lasers like coming through our tent and everything. And they went on until 4 a.m. with the, but at a certain point we're like, oh, we should have just joined in on the fun. But we had a big climb the next day and we're running low on food, so we wanted to get to the next town. But it was just really funny. And we didn't realize we were on a stage. So the night before, there was like this flat wooden platform. So we slept on that. And it was apparently a stage. So there are people around us like unplugging speakers. So that's that story.
You do the motocross one real fast.
Tell your favorite one.
Yeah, I like the motocross one. It's pretty similar to the last one. So Tick Shot, the guy I was talking about earlier, we were all cowboy camping on a dirt road. And cowboy camping is not using your tent just because it's the desert and it's hot. So you just set up your sleeping pad and sleeping bag just on a flat surface. And so we're doing that on an old road and there's gates on both sides. So we're like, okay, the road's closed. There's gonna be no one on it. So we all set up, there's maybe 5 or 6 of us sleeping there. And all of a sudden we hear Snoop Dogg playing like really loud in the far away. And we're like, what's going on? So we all stand up and start looking. And maybe a mile away, we see lights, like tons of lights coming at us. And not just any lights, they're like these big, bright LED lights that are blinding us. We're like, what's going on? So we all like rip our stuff. Is like, is someone gonna come up the road? And so maybe at 70 miles an hour, these people whip around this corner and like jump up this hill. And so we're like, whoa, like what's going on? So we pulled one aside, we waved them down and they're like, are you okay? Like, why are you out here? We're like, yeah, we're fine. But they kept coming back and forth throughout the night. So like every hour we hear like, we'd all wake up and like watch them like hit the jump.
Motocross in the middle of the night.
Yeah, but it was
Wow.
it was 100-mile night race. So and so I think one of the big keys to winning that race was the lights, because it's hard to see out there, and especially going up and down real fast. So the lights were so bright, like you looked at them for a second and you couldn't see for 10 seconds.
Just a question about the trail itself. I mean, that's a mammoth length of trail, and you're going through different weather conditions and snow and water. How marked is the trail? How do you know you're going the right way?
So the PCTA, who runs the trail, marks only certain sections of the trail where it's allowed. So in wilderness areas, which are designated by the government to be untouched, no markings really. It's just a trail. So when you're in a wilderness area in snow, nothing exists because there's no footpath and there's no markers. So it's all route finding. And that was maybe 500 miles with no markings and snow. And then the rest is pretty well marked because you have a lot of day hikers out using the trail. And in remote sections, it does get overgrown where you can't see the trail, but it's usually pretty easy to follow.
Question.
What's next for you?
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm going
Oh, look at
back to
that.
college. That's the next step for me. Right now I'm working an internship and then I'll go back to college and just continue my education and maybe do something like this again. Yeah.
And put on 10 pounds.
Yeah.
What was your footwear? Did you use one pair? Did you go through a couple?
So I went through 6 pairs of these.
Oh my gosh, wow.
In the desert, I got a pair to last about 1,000 miles, but every other pair, when there's rocks, it didn't last that long.
Did you mail them to yourself during the way, or?
Yeah, my mom mailed them along the way.
What's the make of it?
What brand?
These are called zero drop shoes, so they don't have an incline at all to them. And they have a wide toe box because your foot swells throughout the day and throughout the trail. I think I was a size bigger when I came back just because my foot swelled up pretty good. And the brand.
What about in the snow?
In the snow?
Yeah.
I used different traction devices. Oh, these are not waterproof, so you dry them out midday or just suck it up.
Yeah.
Because boots are gonna dry a lot slower if you get water in them. And when you're doing river crossings, you want your shoes on for traction, and water's definitely gonna get in them.
What was your total budget?
So I spent about $5,000 throughout the whole trail.
With lights.
Yeah, with lights and everything, all the gear too.
Baden, can they still access your diary website?
Yeah, so I wrote a little blog along the way, which I can give to anyone that's interested, yeah.
What was your longest day and your average day?
Longest day was 32 miles, but some people will do something called the 24-hour challenge and kick through 80 miles in a day. And my average was about 25 to 26 near the end. Near the end, it was like, oh, we'll just do a marathon every day to kind of like get things done.
How long, the total, how many days?
It was about 5 months. Yeah, I don't know the exact days. Yeah.
Baden, how much weight did you lose?
Like 35 pounds, I think.
Yeah.
What was your motivation for doing this? Why did you? Other than saving your mom tuition for a semester.
I thought it would be fun.
Yeah, okay. But you obviously did a lot of preparation in terms of.
Not really. The only thing I did for preparation was with a few friends up at Penn State. I went on a few backpacking trips, but that was all the preparation I did. Nothing
You did
physical.
classes and you did
Well,
a lot of research.
The wilderness first aid class, yeah, that's some preparation.
So what was the first aid that you administered to someone else that you referenced?
So there were like 3 or 4 times. Probably the worst was dehydration in the Mojave. Yeah, there was a lady that didn't bring enough water for a very long section.
But you had taken certification in wilderness first aid as well.
Yeah.
Did you see any like crazy wildlife, like like bears and
Yeah,
snakes
so a
and all
lot
that
of
stuff?
bears, maybe hundreds of snakes. In the desert, it was pretty commonplace to see a rattlesnake and just walk around it. Skunks, there was some ridgy trail where you can't really walk off the side either way. And there were skunks lined up on the trail. So I had to like, kind of like keep them going. And it was a whole mile that I did that until the trail evened out enough where I could walk around it.
You plan on going on this trip on your own, or do you have a couple buddies to go with you, or do you?
So I started on my
plan to meet
own.
people?
Yeah, I started on my own and met a lot of people. I think about 80–90% of people start alone and plan to meet people along the way.
Why PCT over the Appalachian Trail?
I've grown up around the Appalachian Trail and this seemed fun and new. Yeah.
No blisters or any injuries?
Oh, yeah. Injury-wise, shin splints, which I've gotten before for cross-country season. So I kind of knew what it felt like and then did like the exercises that I've done in the past for that. Blisters weren't that bad. I used Leukotape, which is kind of a really thick really sticky tape that never comes off. And if you just put that around the blister, it goes away. But blisters only happen the first 200 miles, and then you're usually pretty good unless conditions change. Snow was really bad for blisters because these spikes will wear in different places on your shoe. So they put pressure on certain places.
Socks, special socks?
Just wool socks that dry fast. Yep.
How long did it take you to adjust, I guess, back to normal life?
Not that long. Yeah, I had like a week where I just ate and slept, and then I was good.
But some people have a really difficult time with re-entry, for being out there 5 months, so some people actually have to get psychological help.
Yeah.
It's true.
Like
Yeah.
post-traumatic stress
Yes.
disorder. How long would you sleep, average night?
13 or 14 hours
So
sometimes.
you
Yeah.
had to pack in the sleep.
Yeah, the sleep was super important. We'd go to bed at when the sun set and then sunrise because we didn't really look at time much. So when the sun set, you went to bed. When the sun rose,
When did you
woke up.
put on? What day of the year?
May 7th.
So,
Yep.
so you had long, I mean, when you say you went to bed when the sun set in the summer, would you, it'd be like 8 o'clock or something?
Yeah, so it
So
would
you go
it would
in and-
switch. Yeah. Yeah, but most of the time I would say about 12 hours of sleep, but it depended on the sun.
You gonna write up something besides your blog?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe in the future.
Do it now while you remember it.
Yeah.
Good point.
Is there one like